All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have a very rich panel this morning with participants who bring a mix of backgrounds from high tech to R&D to academia to nonprofit to innovation. So I'd like to jump right in and just ask each of you if you would please give about a minute or so introduction that includes what or who inspired you to pursue a career in STEM, and sort of tie that into your focus today, what you'd like to share with the audience.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Yossi Elran. I work at the Davidson Institute for Science Education, which is the educational arm of the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, one of the leading academic scientific research institutes in the world. What inspired me to move from science into education, I think, was the growing gap between what I saw as a scientist was being done in the laboratories. I'm trained as a theoretical quantum mechanic, expert in chemistry, and what is actually being taught to our kids through different programs. And I saw that the kids were very naturally curious, and whenever we touched on topics that are actually happening now in the labs, and I saw there was a big gap between what they're learning in the formal system and what they can be doing and participating in. So that's who I am and what I do. I'm head of the Innovation Center for Science Education, looking for new ways to get science that's actually being done into out there to the world.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Revital Duek. I'm the CEO of Atid Plus Foundation for Education in Israel. It's an NGO. I used to work for 22 years for the high-tech industry. I'm myself an engineer. I saw the gaps, the gender gaps first, and then I joined the Mandel Leadership Institute for 2 years and see that I was living in a bubble in the high-tech industry, and I saw unprivileged social-economical population in Israel, which the STEM education is a challenge for them to access. And this is what Atid Plus and myself vision to advance.
Good morning. My name is Gidi Kaplan. I've been many years in the high-tech industry as an engineer and entrepreneur. And actually, the first spark to become an engineer for me was when I built my first own little radio. As a child, like about 10 years ago, I decided to make a move to education out of a personal mission, because I thought that indeed the career in science and technology is fascinating, and I thought that too many youngsters do not pursue it, boys and girls, because they feel it is dry, it is hard, it's not interesting, and I wanted to contribute at least a little part of my own to change this and have more children decide on such career.
Wonderful, thank you. So looking ahead towards the future, when you're thinking of STEM innovators, the students that are going to become the future creators of tomorrow, what are the skills and competencies that each of you are looking to integrate in your work, respectively?
Okay, today I had to say I'm teaching a special program called RoboPhysics, which is both for junior high school and high school, and as well as a teacher trainer. And one of the main issues or pillars of our program is interdisciplinary and system thinking, and the other is internal motivation. So these are the main ingredients. I think that, as we all know, nature is a system of systems, and it is not enough today in this complex world to teach the basic laws of physics and just to make drills or exercises about them. It is rather much more important to develop the capability to ask questions, to assess, even in a qualitative manner, to guess, to go back and forth between what is known and unknown. And this is for me a fascinating route, though it is not easy quite often for young children. This roller coaster between aha moments and moments where you feel that you don't know. This is what I want to find or encourage, inspiring inspiration and joy, as well as doing the efforts to become an expert.
I totally agree with my friend Gidi, and I think that theoretically the 21st skills mentioned in the Ministry of Education visions are the skills that we should advance, but practically we don't see it in the field, and all the issues of teamwork, the experience, the relevant subject to be taught are the ones who we should look for them to give the students the experience for the future.
I also agree. I don't have much to add. I'll just say that curiosity comes natural to everyone at every age. We need to pose challenges and problems that are exciting and and use the natural curiosity of everyone to learn, and that everyone participate in the science and scientific or STEM study as it is being done today in relevant context outside the educational system.
So switching gears for a second, thinking about teachers' place in the equation and ensuring that kids have the proper motivation and training and ability to take on certain risks and bounce back, as you said, from the roller coaster. What do you think is crucial when we talk about teacher training, teacher professional development, to be able to foster that kind of perspective and that kind of adventuresome approach that you're hoping to cultivate in students?
We're living in an age where the barriers are breaking down between disciplines and between classes, if you could say, or the hierarchy. So teachers have to, in my mind, be part of the learning system together with their students and help their students by facilitating learning. And they should also be curious. They should. A lot of them are, but they should be allowed. A lot of them are, in my mind, too much geared toward curriculum, towards what is imposed on them to teach, rather than letting them and their kids follow their own curiosity.
I totally agree, and I want to add that the measurement of teachers is not engaged with the what we expect them to teach for the 21st skills we want the students to learn. So there is a huge gap between the exams, the measurement tools, and what we expect them and the way we expect them to teach. So I think if we are talking about teacher training, we have to add on top of it the measurement of the students and the teachers for the 21st century.
I would also add that from my personal experience, being a teacher in a PBL, project-based learning method, requires sometimes a lot more effort and it's on the teacher. And it does require an experience of how to be a mentor and how to be a manager, but at the same time let the students have their freedom and to manage their own projects. And this, I think, should be much more important part of a teacher's training. moreover, I would say that not only before they become teachers, but on-the-job training, for me, I think that teachers should be allowed to have at least, say, several hours a week, at least 2 or 3 hours a week for research and development. And this will ensure that they can go on being a part of the learning cycle, as my colleagues have just said. And not only giving the lectures and running from class to class, but as I mentioned, being able to sit down and do a development of their own.
So shifting again to another group, probably have a number of product creators in the audience. What would be some of your advice to people who are developing products in STEM for students, lessons that they can learn from your experience working with students in different contexts, any great examples of resources that you've seen being quite effective, pedagogical approaches, anything you'd like to share?
Well, it's, I would say that developing a successful program is how do you say, a tough road or a challenging road, because really the quest for engagement is everlasting. How do you keep your students engaged and with an ongoing process, as we said, that sometimes and understand that the process is more important even than the end result? How do you enrich the ecology that it is allowed to make mistakes as part of a program, that you don't have only to give the proper answer or the correct answer, that there are several answers, that there are several ways to implement. And this is one of the ingredients I would like to have more focus on when we develop a program, but as well as I said, letting the students play with even complex scenarios. On one hand, study the basic concepts on which the know-how and capabilities are built, but at the same time letting them, as I said, play with it, tackle several scenarios by themselves, and by this develop their capacity towards an expert thinking.
There is not much to add, but I should add that I think the program should be relevant for the students, and I'm a great fan of Lego education, and I think it's a good example to see how learning by gaming can reach our goals for the students.
That's a tough question. I think, first of all, content providers have to know what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. So it is important that those creating content be well versed in what they're trying to do. I'm not sure, this should be obvious, right? If you want to teach math, then you need to know math. If you want, there is subject to be known, and sometimes that's not appreciated as much. This does go maybe a bit 180. It sounds as if this is 180 degrees opposite of what we were saying before. But in truth, it's not, because expertise is something that you gain through doing. And doing is done by, and learning is done by everything. So you don't need to be a mathematician to teach good math. You need to do and research and participate in mathematical challenges along the way, along your career, as you were saying before, in order to make such to gain such a speciality. And the other thing I would like to say is, get relevant topics that are interesting, topics that address things today. How did Bereshit get on the moon? That's something kids can find themselves and start learning just by self-study if it's directed correctly by their teachers or educators.
If I may add, already I think like 40 years ago, there is a famous person, Professor Seymour Papert, who talked about constructionism. And I think he sort of brought it up maybe too early, because there were no low-cost computers and a lot of low-cost technology which we can use today. And I truly believe learning by doing and having a project that kids can be inspired from, and that especially in the young ages becoming more friendly with science and technology, and seeing how fascinating it could be, even if the challenges sometimes are high.
So let's talk for a minute about the interdisciplinary aspect, thinking also about the hard skills and the soft skills, integrating some of the ways of doing STEM, the critical thinking, the different levels of analyses, and integrating that into other areas of study, the humanities, other things. So how have you seen STEM ways of thinking working really well in other contexts? And how can we sort of encourage more of that?
Well, that's an easy question to answer. Next week, we're holding a workshop where mathematicians and origami artists and mathematicians from the Weizmann Institute, like professors, and excellent kids from schools in Israel, and educators are all coming together for a workshop to study the connection between origami and math. A lot of mathematicians don't know origami, and a lot of kids don't know the math behind origami, and so they're actually going to work and study together and interconnect. We already have such an experience with in ecology, where Weizmann scientists partnered with teachers and students to actively participate in study that is going on at the Weizmann Institute of what's happening in an ecological system, and that works very well. Not only did the kids learn from the scientists and learn by doing scientific study, but the scientists also learned from the kids, and learned about interaction, about questions. The kids brought up questions the scientists didn't think about. So these kind of ecosystems and should be encouraged all around the world, not just in local places, but also international collaborations.
I totally agree that ecosystem is the right word to answer your question. I can give an example for a program we are running in Atid Plus. It's called Technovation. It's a developing application. Girls who are developing applications for the community, for the needs of the society they recognize needed. And the mentors are all mentors from the high-tech industry. So this meeting of women from high-tech and girls from unprivileged population like youth villages we are working in brought us this year as a pilot for 5 great applications for the community. So we built an ecosystem based on the girls in youth villages, the management of the youth villages, the Ministry of Education inspectors, and the industry, the high-tech industry we have here. And we are all learning together, because at the first point, nobody knows what is going to be with the idea of developing application. The goal was to improve our society, and the developing of application was the how, not what.
I admire this imagination, and I will say that we should always remember that as educator, we should be value-driven. We're not into professional development or training. We are in education, and that's one thing. And the other is that if you look today on the maker movement coming into the education system slowly but surely, this is not relevant only to STEM subjects. It could be relevant to history or geography teachers or any other subjects, and the collaboration of different areas and different subjects, I think, could be a vital effect in having students much more enthusiastic.
Just one short sentence, since you're here. BrainPOP itself is a great example of art and really connecting kids with the great content.
Thank you. Let's turn for a second to the question of impact. How are you seeing the impact of your individual programs, and what sort of lessons can product creators and others in the audience take from that in terms of really trying to identify ways to measure impact and, you know, ensure that there is that ripple effect that you're looking for?
Measuring impact is difficult. We're a very large organization, and we work a lot with digital resources to make a larger impact. Every collaboration that we do is creates that ripple effect, so I'd say that that's what we do. But I think it's just a slow but sure process. One thing I'd like to mention is we do work quite closely with the Ministry of Education, but it's difficult in governmental systems for programs to get into the system quickly. And this is true of any country. It's the problem of the structure, not the problem of the of a specific thing. That's why I think extracurricular programs that can have a large impact are so important, because they can get there quicker, and they can sort of drive the system.
I'll answer by one example of one girl who told me we were invited for a conference called Saluna in Israel by the NSO vice president, who was supposed to give a lecture there, and she wanted us to stand with her on the stage and tell about Technovation challenge. And on the break, we have one girl told me that she started this year with 3 points mathematics, and then we, as Atid Plus, brought teachers for 4 and 5, which is not in the area of youth villages, unfortunately. And she moved to 4 points. And then we brought the Technovation Challenge program, and she started programming. And now she wanted my help to convince the management of the youth village that she can make Bagrut, the assessment of the Bagrut, in computer science. So the impact, it's an example, the impact of one girl, a team of teachers and managers in the formal education, and the whole family, that she may be the first for academic studies in the future. So I believe that that's what we are doing in Atid Plus.
I would say that there is a multivariant issue here, that on one hand, education, you need to look at the long term, and from my own experience, we saw pupils who had this program, RoboPhysics, from the 9th grade until the end of the 12th grade, that they developed enormously in their capacity, in their self-esteem, in their quest for excellence. On the other hand, of course, you don't always succeed, and that's where you should look for the general picture. And I would say, if you, as an educator, think on learning as a transformation, which is could be fantastic, but as you have also to watch out and look and see every pupil in your class.
Thinking about the audience again, in terms of partnerships and collaborations, are there any opportunities that you feel would be crucial for you to pursue in partnership with others? And if you'd like to share a bit about what sort of the next frontier is in each of your respective ventures, maybe we'll plant some ideas of possible future collaborations.
I think personally I'd like to see more collaboration with teacher training programs and more discourse between various schools and a group of teachers on how to improve the teaching methodologies and teaching and learning for the 21st century.
I would add that cooperation with the high-tech industry here help students to build their vision for themselves for the future. And all this discussion together about STEM education and what we want to develop together as a team, and all the visits give this audience of, I'm especially talking about unprivileged population in Israel, but it can be for all, give them the right to dream and the opportunity to believe they can go any subject they want, but from the position of choosing.
If a top rocket scientist is stranded on an island with a kid from an uneducated area, at the end of the day, they're both human beings who are going to speak to each other, collaborate to each other, and learn from each other. My vision for the future, education, it's something fantastic. There's no politics. There's no, or there shouldn't be. There's no but there's no politics, no barriers. Everyone can do anything to make his or her life better and for the world as well. So we're looking for, so I vision a world of much more collaboration between countries through education, especially STEM. So, you know, we're at a stage, our organization, as I said, we're large with 200 FTEs. We're looking now to go global and for global opportunities to connect with different players, teachers, kids, companies, scientists from over the world, and to work together on a larger scale science collaborative project.
Wonderful. And with the 30 seconds that we have left, what do you think is missing in the STEM discourse today that we can sort of take home to think about?
Well, part of it is what Revital mentioned, is how we improve giving an equal opportunity to each and every child, boy and girl in underprivileged areas. This is something that I'd like to see improving and developing. And second is the refreshment or refreshed way of teaching and learning.
I would add the measurement of programs, curriculum, teachers, and students.
And I would say the freedom for students and teachers to explore and study and get excited again.
Great. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our panelists. I'm sure they'll be happy to take questions after the session, and we'll close. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilana from BrainPOP.